Well, all right. Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. My name is Jason Levine, and thank you so much for joining me today on Adobe Live for this video masterclass, where I will be talking about how to repurpose your videos for sharing on social. And there's three main elements that kind of come into play when you're going to repurpose or reversion a video that you've edited. Most of the content that most of us are editing most of the time is usually in a 16:9 widescreen aspect ratio, the kind of thing that you're used to watching on your own TV or on YouTube. But of course, now, depending upon where you're consuming that content, where you're watching it, whether it's on, everywhere from TikTok to Twitter to Instagram to Facebook, you have a whole series of different screen sizes and options as to how you can deliver that content, right? So it can be 9:16 vertical, it can be square, it can be 4:5, which is slowly becoming the new standard on Facebook. So there's a couple of things to consider when sort of reframing the video content. Now, you used to have to do this manually. I'm going to show you how to do it using our Adobe Sensei powered auto-reframe, which has just been updated in the very recent update of Premiere, which came out about 4 days ago. But outside of that, outside of just reframing the video itself, there's also two additional things. First of all, if you've got any kind of graphics, and by this I mean like motion graphics, lower thirds, titles, and things like that, well, these two have to be considered when you change screen sizes, frame sizes, aspect ratios, because depending upon where you place these things, and based on how you've changed that aspect, things might kind of fall off screen. So you need to be aware of that. We're going to talk a little bit about that via the Essential Graphics panel and how to create responsive motion graphics templates. And then the third thing to consider, which is, you can't, it's just something that I've noticed recently when I've seen different videos published in different the same video published in different places, is how you're controlling the overall output of the sound. If it's going to YouTube, you definitely want just things loud and punchy and in your face and attention grabbing. And maybe it could be said that you want that everywhere. But I've noticed actually that some of the better reframed productions that I've seen on different social networks actually adjust the audio output levels as well. So I'm going to show you and give you some sort of tips on how to do that and how to kind of reconfigure the master audio output to take advantage of those different screens where it's most likely to be delivered. So as always, we're coming to you live on Behance, YouTube, and Twitter Periscope. So thank you so much for joining. If you want to be part of the conversation, that is happening over at behance.net/live. So a couple quick shouts to everybody watching. What's up? What's up, Antonio? How are you doing? Digital Justine, Ravi, very nice to see you. Edit Doctor, all right. Desiree, Pep Base, how's it going? All right. Hey there, Steve. Hey, Via Lucia. Elizabeth, how's it going? Wade, Yasunari, Mia, Paul Tranny, what's up? Okay. All right. I think it's probably time to switch over. So let's go ahead and get started here. All right. And let's move over to my screen. And let's start talking about this. Okay. So we're starting here with some footage, a short film, which I highly recommend you go check out. You can find the whole thing on Vimeo. It's called See You Around. You can see it in the little lower third right there. Directed by Oren Brimmer. Actually, that's Oren Brimmer right here. He's the guy, the character on the right. He's in his own short film here. And I'm going to play a little bit of this for you just to kind of get started. I've shown this content before on the stream. Again, this is a standard sort of short film movie style produced 16:9 widescreen because the original delivery was meant to be Vimeo, YouTube, Netflix, whatever. And this is how we're typically consuming this kind of content. So just real quick, I'm going to play a couple seconds of this back for you just so you can kind of get an idea and watch and see sort of how the camera is moving. There's quite a few instances. You can actually see one here where they're doing sort of a rack focus or a focus pull into different sections of the frame. This all ties into what Sensei does in terms of how it auto-detects and auto-senses how it should reframe the video to put action in place for you. And that's really the essence of what auto-reframe is doing, powered by Sensei, which for those of you unfamiliar, that's our AI-based engine that's automatically detecting, not just motion inside of the clip, but region of interest. Yes, it's looking for faces, but it's not just looking for faces. And it's going to try and follow that action and keep that action in the center of a 9x16 or a square or a 4x5 or a 16x9, whatever it is. And it does this automatically. Now, the really cool thing, of course, much like a lot of the Sensei power technologies that we have in Essential Sound as well as in Lumetri Color, what it does, what it creates, what it reframes for you is totally editable after the fact. So it's not like apply this and you're stuck. It may not always get it right? I mean, it's AI after all. Let's not pretend that AI is perfect. It isn't. So you have full editability of this should you need to. But it also does some pretty amazing things, and it's almost like a virtual director in a lot of ways. And in this particular film, it does some pretty neat stuff. Those two guys mean business in that frame, says Steve. So true. So true. There's a lot of good stink eyes in this clip. Okay, let's go ahead and watch this. Here, you know what? I'm going to go, I'll go full screen on it here. And let me take my camera out of here for a second. All right. Let's let you watch this minute or so of See You Around. Here we go. Oh, and you know what? Hold on. Before I do that, sorry. I want to take out the lower thirds. You don't need to see those in here. I just put those in for later. Okay. So by the way, this is Control tilde. This gives you the uninterrupted full screen view as opposed to this, right? Which if you just hit the tilde key on the US keyboard, this is full screen, but you still have all the buttons. Control tilde gets rid of all of that, which is a really nice way to kind of view your content. Okay, here we go.
Hi. I'd like to get a drink, please.
Okay.
Great. I'd like an elderberry.
Oh, actually, we don't have that.
I've been here before, and I've definitely had it here, so you.
Oh, okay. I've only been working here for 5 years, so let me just check on that for you. Yeah, no, we don't have it.
Okay, I'll take a shot of Fireball.
Perfect.
Okay. And I'm realizing that, of course, yes, the audio's not finally mastered on here. I left that on purpose, so it might be a little bit quieter than it ought to be. That's okay. We will tackle that momentarily. All right, let me bring my camera back in here. Bzz, there I am. All right. So again, as I kind of scrub through all of this, I'm just going to drop the master audio down here for a second so you don't have to hear me scrubbing. You can see that in this first scene, just from the very first shot, right, camera's in focus on our subject here, right, pans over a little bit, and then we do, again, this focus pull onto the bartender, right? So you kind of get that shallow depth of field on the back of him. If we were doing a split diopter, they would both be in focus. That's a different thing that I've learned from my good friend Vashi Nedemansky. All right. And again, you can see how the camera's kind of following the action between these two characters. Now, again, the guy on the right, Oren, is talking, but the action is really on our friend here who's drinking the beer because he just got interrupted, right? So again, when you've got scenes with multiple people in them, and if you were going to a vertical aspect, which is so common these days, what goes in the frame, right? It was shot with elements on either side of the frame. So you do ultimately have to kind of make a choice, right? You can't really squeeze them in together. I mean, I suppose you could. Probably don't want to do that. So again, this gives you the opportunity to either maybe move, so you can have a pan inside of that reframed section based on the screen size, or maybe you just stick on one character. Again, lots of things to consider here. All right. But overall, it seems like a pretty straightforward kind of reframe, right? Again, she's kind of located in the sort of right third of the frame over here. Really, it's just the two shot with the two of them. And there's some movement on the camera, right? This one's a bit wider right here, okay? Her shot is the same. They're sort of both centered. Again, who do we keep in frame here? Probably the guy talking, right? Keep on moving here. All right. Nice tight close-up of him. So as I'm reviewing this, I'm thinking to myself, all right, if I were going to do this manually, how much work, how much time would this take me? Well, there's a lot of cuts in here. So if I had to reframe each one of these for a different aspect, it would probably take some time. Now, just to kind of showcase to you how you would do this manually if you wanted to, right? So first and foremost, you would probably copy or duplicate this sequence. I've got my project panel hidden behind the camera here, but I'm going to go ahead and just duplicate this for the heck of it. All right, I'm just going to duplicate that. All right. And what you might be thinking is, okay, let's just go ahead and sort of change the aspect ratio, right? And this is how you would have probably done it before. I mean, there's lots of different ways to make that new sequence. You could nest this existing one into a new one. Lots of options here. But if we have this sequence selected and we go into sequence settings, all right, right up at the top here under video is where you can adjust your frame size, all right, as well as your aspect ratio. Aspect ratio is not going to change for this, but we are going to change the frame size. So if instead we wanted to go to a 1080 by 1920, all right, or maybe more commonly 720 1280, doesn't matter. They're both 9 by 16, okay? So here, we'll even do it at 1080 1920. Okay? And I'm just going to make that change right away. All right, that's just telling me about the preview files. So of course, this is what you would end up with, right? So the first task would be you'd have to do some careful zooming on here. And by the way, there's some of the overlays and things. That's why we're getting this weird. This particular timeline I customized, so this is not the best example of this, but you get the idea. So first of all, we'd have to zoom things in, right? So we'd have to come in here and go into our effects controls, and we'd have to like scale some of these elements up, right, to bring her more into frame. Unless you want this letterboxing at the top and bottom, which you probably don't. That looks lousy, right? So you'd have to do a lot of that. And then based on the talking, the movement, like over here, you know, he's totally out of frame right there. So again, we'd have to readjust the position of that. There's just a lot of things that you'd have to consider, right, when reframing this for a 9 by 16. So again, you can imagine how time consuming that is doing it manually. So this is why we're going to introduce auto-reframe. Now, auto-reframe was released, when did we release this? Was this last year at Max? I've already, yes, last year at Max, November 2019. This was one of the showcase features that I highlighted there. Okay, and again, leveraging Adobe Sensei, it's going to auto-detect motion, region of interest, faces, and try and reframe the video for you. Now, in the update that just hit Creative Cloud on the 18th, just a couple of days ago, this has been significantly sped up, right? It was pretty fast anyway, but it's even faster now and a bit more accurate in my testing. So let me show you how that all works. I'm just gonna check over here, make sure we're not, no questions here. Antonia, I'm impressed by the machine who's streaming and playing back Premiere in full. Oh yes, indeed. And this is, by the way, this is already a 3-year-old iMac 5K, 64 gigs of RAM, 8 gig AMD Radeon video card, and 2 terabyte SSD, but all the media is, of course, being accessed externally. All right, split diopter Bogdan is, easiest way to describe that is if in a scene like this, all right, where again, we're shooting so close to this guy. So if we wanted to get her in focus, we'd have to adjust that focus ring, which is automatically going to make him blurry, right? We're adjusting that depth of field focus. Split diopter is where you would see both of those in focus. And there's a lot of cool shots and a lot of very famous films where they achieve this effect. That's a whole other stream. But anyway, that's what that look is. All right. Elizabeth, nice. Okay. What's up, Gregory? It isn't. Okay. So let's go ahead and I'm just going to bring up the project panel up here for a second. Okay. Let's go back to this first frame. And we're going to select this sequence right here. All right. And I'm simply going to right click, control click on it. And from this menu, I'm going to choose, move this up, auto reframe sequence. Okay. Just like that. And when you do that, it's going to pull up this dialog right here. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward. Okay, what is this saying in here? All right. So first and foremost, you can give it a name, right? So it's just going to take the existing sequence name. We'll leave it for right this second. And then you have your target aspect ratio, all right? Now it defaults, it looks like, to square now. If you click on the down arrow, you'll see that you have options for square, all right? So this would have been kind of your classic standard Instagram delivery. Now, of course, Instagram does everything. I like square videos. I despised them at first. Now there's something, I don't know, there's something very inviting about square. It makes me think about like Polaroids. I don't know. It gives it kind of a cool retro feel for me. I just like it. 4x5, again, you're seeing this a lot on Facebook, okay, and elsewhere. 9x16, classic vertical delivery that we're used to on our mobile devices, TikTok included. Horizontal 16:9, and then custom. So the cool thing about this is, let's say that you have a very specific aspect ratio that you want to deliver this in, you just go to custom and you can now type in manually that aspect ratio. So this is just one of those cool things. They've just given us that flexibility to do just that, okay? You know, if you wanted a specific like 2:1 aspect, you can set all of these ratios here. Really cool that we give you that flexibility. All right. Why don't we, let's do well, I talked about vertical, so let's go to vertical, and then maybe we'll do a square one after. It's kind of cool to see how it changes, how Sensei kind of reconfigures what it's doing based on the different aspect ratios. Now, motion tracking. Not much to really do here. You can either determine that something has slower motion or faster motion. Again, like in the example that I showed on stage at Max where we had this downhill skier, for really fast motion where you've got someone who's kind of moving all throughout the frame, it can behoove you, it can help you to choose something like faster motion. Like if you think about, you know, X Games or something, and you've got a motocross cyclist or someone, you know, someone again on like a skier or a snowboarder or something like that, and you're trying to follow their motion on screen, faster motion might be a good idea. To be honest, I seldom move it from the default. The default is pretty darn good, but these are kind of the categories in terms of how it tracks motion. Is it on the slower side? Is it on the faster side? For something like this, this is sort of slower motion. There's no like real fast anything happening here, minus the cuts themselves. So again, I'm going with default. Different options will yield slightly different results. And because it's an AI engine, it's not necessarily going to produce the same output every time, especially as you choose or change different settings here. So just be mindful of those. Again, for myself, default has kind of worked for me for the most part for almost everything I've used this on. All right. Now this bottom section here, this is kind of slightly more involved for the slightly more advanced user, and it's based around clip nesting. And you can see here it has options where it's saying like, don't nest clips. This will replace your current motion adjustments, or nest them. I want to keep my motion adjustments but remove transitions. So what this is in relation to, what this is talking about, when you apply auto-reframe, and you can also apply auto-reframe at the clip level. So you can drag auto-reframe. It doesn't have to apply to a sequence. You can do this on a single clip as well. If inside of that clip you already have some motion keyframes, so let's say that you've adjusted position. It doesn't even have to be moving. You've just modified the position on screen, right? Let's say that this was 8K, but we're delivering it in 4K. So we're reframing the 8K master to fit into this 4K frame. If you wanted to keep that, you would then select nest those clips, all right? Because you want to keep the your already sort of cropped version, but you just want to take that crop and reframe that crop for a new aspect. If you simply go to don't nest, it'll undo anything that you did, and then it's going to have that whole frame available to you and figure out where the action is. Now, again, based on how it was shot, it may have done the same crop that you did originally. This is getting very detailed here. But that's what that means, all right? So if you've already done some motion adjustments, position adjustments, scaling adjustments, you may want to nest the clips. If you haven't, then choose don't nest, and it will replace your current motion adjustments. All right, makes sense? Yes, okay. Everybody's got that. All right, very cool. By the way, I'm drinking coffee today out of one of my most favorite mugs. If you have any fans of Parks and Rec? Hold on, this is just, it's Ron Swanson. It's worthy of a full screen view here. My Ron Swanson cup. It's a little small for Ron Swanson. It should have been bigger. But what it says is, this is a line from Parks and Rec. Give me all the eggs and bacon you have. And then he repeats himself. I don't know if you heard me just now. I said, give me all the eggs and bacon you have. Bacon and eggs. All right. All right. A little sidetracking there. Okay. Antonio, it's like pre-compose and keep settings in After Effects. Yes, Antonio, exactly. Nesting is essentially Premiere's equivalent of pre-composing, pre-composition. Perfect. Thank you for that. That's why we love these things. Okay. So we've got it done here. Again, I can give it a new name or I can adjust it here. Let's just keep it. Notice it appends whatever your aspect ratio is to the end. All right, zoom back out here. And then let's go ahead and click Create. And this is where, if you've used it before, you're really going to see some performance enhancements. Now, this whole timeline is approximately a minute and, I don't know, 30-something seconds here, 35 seconds. So I don't know exactly how long that entire timeline took before. Maybe it was about 20 seconds or so. Still faster than real time. Maybe it was even 30 seconds, but still pretty quick. Let's go ahead and do this now. Click Create. It's analyzing down below. Oh, it's hard for you to see. There it is. All right. And it's done. So what was before like 20, 30 seconds for a minute and 35 seconds, was it maybe 10 seconds now? Maybe. All right. And there we have it. And right away, right? Now, if you recall, here's our original. So this is again, just talking about AI, Sensei, auto-detecting. Here's our 16:9 frame. Where is our subject? He is not in the center, right? He's off center. But auto-reframe says, okay, we've got this vertical 9:16. We can't have him off center. We'll cut off half his face. So it just beautifully reframes it. I mean, look at it. It's like a perfect shot. I'm making a big deal about this. Woo! But it is a big deal. Because otherwise you'd be doing this yourself, sliding those motion keyframes, okay? So let's go ahead and take a look and see. Ron Swanson. What's up, Cody Bear? Let's take a look and see how it did. And here I'll pull the I'll just pull the audio back up for the heck of it. We'll give it a little extra boost because it was a bit quiet before. All right, here we go. Okay, now wait. I got to stop right there. Let's go back to our original. Again, this is really showcasing to you how cool it is to have this Sensei-assisted director doing the work for you, right? So remember, in this clip, right, it pans over, it focuses onto her, right? And then it cuts away. Now again, she too is on the far right of the frame, but there's this little rack focus and movement right here, right? It's pretty significant. Look at what auto-reframe did. What? Maybe I'm the only one who's just completely amazed by that, but it's pretty awesome, right? So it automatically detected, oh, I get it. That rack focus is putting a new subject in focus, which means that that's where the camera needs to go, because that's where your eye is going. And it did that as well. And then as he raises the beer, right, it kind of pans back over to him. Now, maybe you want to keep it on her. That's up to you, because it doesn't change. We don't rack focus back to him, or focus pull back to him. But I think it's just really cool that it did that automatically. All right, let's keep going. But how did it know? Right. Cal. Oh man, this is insane. Yes! It is insane. Shay Smith. Huge time saver. Yes. Remez. Wow. Glenn Cox. Great stuff. All right, let's keep going.
Hi, yeah, hi. I'd like to get a drink, please.
Okay. I'm gonna stop a lot here because I want to, and then we'll get into the editing. We're gonna get there. Stay tuned, all right? So let's just kind of analyze this shot here. Run back.
Yeah.
All right. So again, Sensei's doing a lot of work here because the shot begins with him in frame, right? And then it follows his motion. We're momentarily blocked by the back of our bartender's head. And then he opens his mouth. Right? He's about to talk, but Oren, you can see him right there, smiling. He gets the first word.
Yeah, hi. I'd like to get a drink.
And Sensei starts to move over, but it kind of missed the action there. Okay? It missed. We should have been on him. It's cool that it stayed on our friend here with his mouth open because that's part of the joke, right? Is that like he's about to talk,
Yeah, hi.
but then the other guy talks. We just needed to move the camera that much faster. So this is where this gets really cool. So let's go into let's come over here. I'm gonna zoom in a little bit on our clip. All right. And let's show all of our properties. All right. Oh, what just happened here? What did I just do? Wait, disabled when motion is applied. Why am I not seeing the keyframes now? Where are my keyframes? What's happening? Why is this not zooming either? Well, that brings me to one point while I'm here also. A couple new things that are just little hidden gems that we have in the new release here. Show all properties. So this is a new filter effects function that you have in Premiere. So you can show all of your properties, only keyframed properties, only edited properties. What? Why is that so essential? Well, if you show all properties, that's going to show everything that's on that particular clip, right? And in this case, we don't have any additional color corrections or anything, but you know, as you add lumetri and other things to a clip, all that stuff starts to populate inside the effects controls, and it gets pretty busy, and there's just a lot of gray and a lot of text and a lot of space. So now you have the option here to simply filter and only show when things are keyframed, all right, or only show edited properties, which is really cool. Now, this is new. I haven't looked at this since we changed this because what's interesting is that I'm not seeing the keyframes now. Where did the keyframes go? I'll just show all. That is showing all. That's new, that message. Disabled when auto-reframe is applied. Interesting. All right, hold on. I'm backing up here. I'm very perplexed by this because we're not seeing the keyframes anymore. Did we change this? I guess we did. There it is, turned off. Huh. I guess we changed it. Changing behaviors. Okay. Fair enough. All right, let's keep on going.
To get a drink, please.
Okay.
Great. I'd like an elderberry liqueur.
Oh, actually, we don't have that.
I've been here before, and I've definitely had it here, so you.
Okay. Now there's a really interesting one again. So here we have him talking.
Here before, and I've definitely had it here, so you.
This just makes me laugh every time. How did Sensei know to pan over?
Here before.
Again, if we look at the original here, what are we at? 2112. Okay, here's the original in widescreen. And the only thing that's happening to our character on the left is that he's kind of giving this stink-eyed look, right? But as we come over here,
Definitely had it here, so you.
Sensei just figured, I think we need to pan over there. Like it sensed some additional motion and it sensed the need to pan over to our character here, which is so darn cool. Absolutely love that.
Oh, okay. You know, I've only been working here for 5 years, so let me just check on that for you.
Right. And then all of these shots, again, where it's just one character talking, beautifully framed.
Yeah, no, we don't have it.
Okay, I'll take a shot of Fireball.
Perfect.
Again, these little subtle movements as she's moving in the frame, the camera's moving in the frame. That movement was not in there, I don't believe. Let's go to 4613. Oh, there actually is a little bit of camera movement here. So it's just accentuating some of that camera movement. All right.
Cheers.
What would you like?
Hi, I'd like...
Okay, cool. Okay, so again, now what's significant about this is that it's taking the place of having to do this manually for each and every one of these cuts. Now, it looks like one of the changes we've made here is that it's disabling seeing those keyframes once auto-reframe has been applied. That's new. That's a change. So what that would mean in the case of something like this, all right, perhaps what we would do here, and oh, I'm seeing, do I have to actually delete this? Very interesting. There we go. Bring it back. Okay, no, I just needed to show it all. In the case of something like this, what I would probably do is set a position keyframe right here, manually, right? And then as our guy comes into frame, oops, wrong direction, I would manually bring this over. Like that, all right? So I just did a manual edit of that specific camera move.
Hi, yeah, hi. I'd like to get a drink, please.
Okay.
Great.
Wow, it's
I'd like an
really slowing
elderberry.
down here. What's happening? I don't know. Okay, so you can see how it's easy enough to manually manipulate these and bring him right back into frame. He's such an expressive dude. I love seeing the faces he's making here. But yes, Sensei is keyframing those automatically, Shay Smith asked, and then you are manually editing should you need to do that, okay? So again, let's go back to this original one here real quickly, and let's see what it does for square. All right, let's go back into before here. Auto reframe sequence square. All right, 1-to-1. Click create. Oh, this coffee really sucks. All right, square delivery here. Wind it back. I'll leave the sound where it is for now. Let's just take a look at how this one did. What is going on? Why is this so freaking sluggish all of a sudden? What is happening? Well, I'm just going to clear my previews real quickly and go back into Metal. By the way, for those of you on NVIDIA cards, 1080 series or above, also released on Tuesday, we now have accelerated rendering on Windows for NVIDIA and AMD, and it is ridiculous. Really significant, minimum 2 to 3 times faster with working with a variety of codecs using the NVENC NVIDIA encoding process there, and very significant. Okay, let's take a look. Let's see if this is better now. Hopefully it is. Maybe I'll move this to half. Oh, it's still puttering away. I don't know why it's doing that. Okay. But it looks like it's got the same kind of camera moves. Now again, because in Square we have more frame, we have more real estate. She's centered again in this first shot. And it still pans over to him as he raises the beer right there. So again, it kind of retains all of the action from that first scene. All right, here's our scene where Oren comes in. Oh, look at that. And in the square version, it caught his motion this time. I don't know why it's going so slow. It doesn't even show that we're dropping any frames, which is weird. But it really perfectly did. Look at that. It really perfectly captured this moment, right? This is what we missed. It missed that when it went vertical. It's really doing it very sweetly here in square. So this is why I'm saying, so you're going to get different results based on the aspect ratios that you're using, all right? So again, we can play this whole thing. I think you get the idea. So that's auto-reframe. Again, how did I engage that? From the sequence level. That is typically how I would use it, right? So you've got your finished sequence. Now you want to repurpose it for something else. Right-click, control-click on your sequence and choose auto-reframe sequence. Okay. Wild. What's up, Valentina V? Okay. So let's go into motion graphics now, all right? Antonio, can you adjust the first scene to reframing to the waitress instead of the drinking? Oh, absolutely. Sure. So again, just as I manually just edited that shot, you would effectively do the same thing if Sensei didn't detect it. What's shocking to me is that we have seemingly removed visualizing the keyframes, which we didn't do before. So I'm very confused here. Why did we take that out? Yeah, I'm just not seeing it. It's strange. Strange. Yeah, it shows it as being edited. You're just not seeing them. Okay. All right. Motion graphics. So we're going to go back to the original one here, where I had those two little lower thirds applied. Okay. Now, this is more around a good practice if you're going to create something knowing that you're going to go to different screen sizes and you want your graphics, you want a slightly faster way to get your graphics ready for that screen size. So using Essential Graphics, this is a really simple lower third. I can't even remember if this I may have built this one or this may have been one of the free ones. All right, nothing fancy there by any means. What you can see if we look up in Essential Graphics here is that you have two text layers, two shape layers, all right? And this particular lower third was built to be responsive to positioning. How do I know this? All right, if I go ahead and select the text layers, all right, we're going to focus on this upper quadrant here of Essential Graphics. You may have noticed that we have this little pinning diagram. So for both layers of text, what we're doing is we're saying always pin it to the video frame, all right? And more specifically, always pin it in relation to where I've placed it on screen now to this bottom lower left corner. So for both of these, and it'll sort of respect the overall positioning in terms of like what's on top, what's on the bottom in that general area, lower left corner. Here's the thing. If you don't create these responsively, all right, and you were to take this lower third that didn't have this applied, and then you dragged this into a 9:16, well, that position is slightly different, and it's thinking that this is widescreen, so it may not apply exactly where you want it to go. So this just better ensures that the relative position for this is going to always be in that lower left corner, whether it's going vertical, whether it's going square, whether it's going whatever the aspect ratio is. So for the text, we want the text to always appear here. Now we have these shape layers attached to the text. And what the shape layers are doing is they are responding to the characters in that text, meaning that they are reflowing or growing or shrinking based on how much text you've typed in there. Case in point. So if I were to select my see you around text, all right, and I say tomorrow, you see that that box is growing as I type the text, all right? That's because that box is pinned to the text layer, all right? Which means that as you type, that box will change its length based on the amount of text. And so it's pinned to the text layer, and it's pinned to all 4 corners of the text layer. This gets a little confusing. You can also just click the middle here to select top, bottom, left, and right. All right. So this is essentially how you create a responsive template. All right. Now, what this again is going to let you do is if you're going to go over here, let's go into Essential Graphics, and it's this one right here. Now, remember I told you it's relative. This isn't exactly perfect, and some of these typically need a little bit of retooling here. But again, this was created to be 16 by 9. Don't forget, you always have this little info button at the bottom inside of Essential Graphics to give you additional information about these templates. So this will just tell you a little bit more, the font that's being used. Here's some of the keywords. Okay, I didn't make this one because I don't think I put those keywords in there. All right, by the way, if you see that, it's telling you that you don't have that font installed. So once you drag it in, it'll automatically license that font for you. So if we go ahead and drag this in now, all right, now this is going to have whatever the default text was. Turn this back on, sorry about that. Okay, you can see that it is appearing in approximately the correct location for whatever reason, and I tend to see this a lot. It somehow breaks the relationship vertically of when you have like multiple lower third boxes. I've seen this happen before. So you could simply take those two, the top shape and your text element here, and you could drag them down. All right, oh, this is a little difficult. Let's make this a little bit bigger. Okay. You can drag them down, drag the position down, and snap them together like that. All right. Oh, and you'll want to be at the beginning if there's animation, because now it's going to animate that. Yeah, that looks fantastic. Okay. But that's just kind of showing you how you snap it into position. By the way, if you also noticed when I was doing that, forget my unintended keyframes there, you may have noticed these snapping lines. So even without the rulers on, even without the grids on, I have these snapping lines. How do you get these snapping lines? Well, you can use the Command or Control key on Mac or Windows, respectively, or inside the settings menu here, we click this. Towards the bottom, you have this option to snap in Program Monitor. So by enabling this, this will give you those snapping locations. So again, regardless of animation, this is just nice because it allows you to find, you know, center, or again, snap to the edges of an existing graphic or the edge of your frame or what have you. It's just so nice to have these in there. Again, you can see because there was motion on this, it's drawing keyframes right now because I'm not at the beginning of the animation. So again, if you want to modify those, modify heights, just make sure that you're at the beginning of the respective clip, okay, like that. All right, and you'd see that they were off screen, so you would just adjust those on this first frame here to avoid that little boomerang thing that I did, okay? So by having them responsive, it's just going to ensure that they're roughly in the right location. By the way, if you run that same thing on auto-reframe, it'll still work because this is responsive. And even if it's not responsive, it still tries to reposition them. But by making them responsive, it's just working a little bit faster. You can also do the same thing, again, not only with these shape layers. By the way, it's also worth pointing out too that in this release, the pen tool and the way that you create Beziers and things, easier, more accurate, better. Again, part of the Tuesday updates to Premiere. So that's definitely stuff worth checking out there. Okay, and last thing we wanted to talk about here is audio. All right, let me just go ahead and look in here. Yasunari, personally, I never had thought of doing this kind of manipulation. It's good to know. Thanks for this tip. Absolutely. Also, by the way, worth pointing out too, so that's responsive positioning. There's also responsive time, and I talked about this on some recent master classes and different Adobe Lives. So this is if you have an animation, for example, this particular animation here, right? As this flies on screen, okay, that animation is approximately 15 frames, And then the outro, how it flies off screen, is 16 frames. When you set these times, they will appear inside the Essential Graphics panel with these little gray boundaries. And any keyframed activity that happens inside those gray boundaries will be preserved regardless of duration. Remember that motion graphics templates can be any length. That you can even see the gray on the motion graphics template itself. So as I expand this, let's say we want this lower third to be on screen for 30 seconds. What's up, Stephanie is live. All right, notice that as I expand it out, those durations never change. All right, it's always preserving that 15 frame animation on, 16 frame animation off. If I squeeze it, again, same thing. 15 frame on, 16 frame off, that never changes. If you want this to be longer, again, I could come over here and let's make it pay attention to what's on screen there. And you'll see it just overtook my cursor, all right, making it longer. There it is again. Shrink it back to 15 frames, okay, like that. So any keyframes that exist in here, it will preserve that animation regardless of how much you stretch it out, okay? And then everything that's kind of in the middle here will get squeezed or stretched accordingly. But the top and tail animations, if you're using responsive design time, always preserves those durations. Shay Smith, when you move the graphic, can you move all the motion keyframes with it? Yeah, so if you wanted to move all the elements around and if there's already, the key is if there's already keyframes, once you move anything, it's recreating keyframes. That's sort of the nature of keyframing, right? Once you add that first keyframe, if you move in time and reposition something, it drops a new keyframe for you. So, if we suddenly wanted all of this stuff to start moving, up here or over here, all right, it's now just keyframed all of that. It was so short it had to move it back, all right? So again, let's make this a little bit longer. Now it's slowly moving, right? I told you it's going to expand those, and now it's moving them back around. But the actual fly off is still 16 frames, right? The fly off is still 16 frames. The fly on is still 15 frames. But because we grabbed all of that, now it's expanding that additional movement that I just did. That actually somehow looks better. Okay. All right. Mish, how do I know which graphic card supports the new NVIDIA accelerated encoding decoding? So it's NVIDIA, it's got to be 1080, what are those, are GTX or RTX? I can't remember. 1080 or above. I'm not sure if it works on 1070 or 1060, and I believe it has to have a minimum of 4 gigs of VRAM. It could be 8. I'll take a second here and I'll see if I can pull up the, here, actually, hold on. Let me switch over to my screen. I might have that web page already loaded up for you, in which case I can stick it in the chat here. All right. Oh yes, ProRes RAW, that's another one. ProRes RAW support came into this recent update. All right. Okay, so here, I'm going to stick this, move over to this. So if you go to the, what's new blog here, I thought there was a better link. Apparently not. So it's on the NVIDIA blogs here. You can see this URL. All right. If you just go inside of your Creative Cloud desktop, what's new in Premiere, there's a link inside of there that will take you to this page or the blog post, and it'll tell you all of the requirements. I'm trying to see if this is going to show you real quickly. This is some of the testing here. I mean, it really is, you can see like how significant it is and how different it is. Does this list them here? Built-in hardware encoder. Okay, it's not saying it right here. I'm sure there's a link somewhere in this. But anyway, you'll be able to get to that if you just go through the desktop. Okay. All right, last thing here. We got 5 minutes. Let's talk about audio. All right. So when you're delivering for, YouTube, Netflix, Vimeo, Hulu, Blu-ray, whatever, typically we want everything to be super loud. I'm not saying that's the best way to do things. I'm just saying that that's how most things are delivered now. Where I personally have a mild heart attack is when I open something on Instagram and it's so loud. Instagram is photography, it's images, right? So when I suddenly get to a video and it's just or a story and it's just crazy loud, I don't know. That doesn't necessarily engage me there because it's a slightly different format. It's a slightly different medium, right? So you can use the multiband compressor brick wall limiter to give your overall production a bit more punch and a bit more loudness based on where you're going. Now, just to be very clear, I've talked about this a lot. This is not mastering. This is just one element of kind of finalizing and homogenizing the overall mix to make it a little bit louder and a little bit more in your face. But this is something that you can test, that you can play around with, that will give you, slightly more dramatic results. So on the master fader here inside of our track mixer, so we want this to affect all the audio in this particular production here, I'm going to click on this available slot. Why is this having some weird UI issues today? What is happening? Amplitude and compression, and we're going to go into multiband compressor. Okay? Double click on the multiband compressor. And inside of here, you're going to see the brick wall limiter. Now, you can use this in and of itself by itself without using the actual compression bands here. Now, I can tell you a pretty safe bet that's not going to radically affect the overall program and actually delivers a pretty nice, balanced, compressed sound is if you start with the broadcast preset or even the classical master. As you imagine, this one is not super loud nor aggressive compression. This one, same thing. This actually is a bit louder, but the compression it's pretty standard. Okay, I like to use the broadcast preset. I usually modify it based on things. So if you want to use some of the compression bands, you can turn that on. The other key element is you want to make sure, and I believe it's on by default, that the brick wall limiter box here is checked. All right, and then the two other settings you need to be aware of. First is margin. Margin is what is the absolute loudest that you want this to be, okay? Now remember, when we're working with digital audio, we're working in a negative logarithmic scale, meaning that 0 is as loud as it gets, all right? And then minus, based on your bit rate, in this case, let's say 24-bit, minus 140 dB is silence, or technically, minus infinity is silent, okay? So what this margin is saying is that this audio will never go above 1/10 of a dB below absolute full amplitude. I don't recommend that. You don't ever want to go to minus 0.1. First of all, your ear doesn't perceive a change in audio that's any less than 1.5 dB anyway. But just to be on the safe side, again, for YouTube and things, I'll usually keep this at around minus 1.5 or minus 2, all right? Can you go to minus 0.5? Sure. Can you hear a difference between minus 1 and minus 0.5? No, not really, no. 0.5 dB at that level? Nah. You might perceive a difference. You're not really hearing a difference, all right? So minus 1.5 is a pretty safe bet. And then the threshold control for this limiter basically acts as your amplifier. How much additional boost you want to give it. So let's start it at 0, okay? I'm going to play this back, and there's music and other things going on here. And then I'm going to adjust the threshold, and you're going to see how this starts to get louder.
Hi, I'd like to get a drink, please.
Okay.
Great. I'd like an elderberry.
Oh, actually, we don't have
Let's
that.
kill it.
I've been here before, and I've definitely had it here, so
Let's bring it back in.
Oh, okay.
All right? Significantly louder. Nice and balanced. That's what the broadcast preset does. The classical one is going to be a little even less aggressive. Now, I would recommend if you've got a really heavy, complex mix with a lot of things going on, you may not want to run the multiband compression part of this. You might want to just use the brick wall limiter. So if you simply bypass these individual bands, now it's not going through the compressor at all. It's only using the limiter circuitry. All right. And this is just a way to kind of glue everything together and just make it a little bit louder and a little bit more present. And I'd probably recommend, a fair amount of this, a threshold maybe -6, margin -1.5, -2 for almost everything, just to kind of give everything a slightly more glued together kind of feeling. If you're comfortable using multiband compression, then that's where you can go in here and set your thresholds accordingly to really get the most punch, the most bang for your buck, so to speak. All right. Now, again, I would recommend not using the same setting for all networks. I mean, you can. There's no reason you can't. But like I said, I've noticed recently that there's this trend on Instagram where things are just way too loud, And if it's captured that way and that's how it is, nothing you can do about it. But, it's kind of like not so long ago where you'd be watching a show on traditional TV. It would cut to a commercial and the commercial was like, 6-10 dB louder than the stuff you were just watching, right? It's jarring. It didn't make me want to buy that product. If anything, I went, no thanks. That's kind of how I feel about this. So just be mindful. Do what you want. Keep them all the same. Up to you. But just be aware that how things are being consumed is different on different, in different locations. All right. And if you're going for full dynamics, you don't want to crank this too hot. You want to leave some range in there. But again, just a little goes a long way, just to kind of glue things together and make it a little more present. And my friends, unfortunately, that is all the time we have. So coming up next, we've got the Illustrator Daily Creative Challenge. So thank you so much for watching. Have a great rest of your morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are in the world. And we'll see you again next time. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.